Top 10 Richest Gangsters in the World. Numerous wealthy criminals disprove the common belief that a life of crime does not pay well. Only a few fortunate minorities get to enjoy their wealth, while the vast majority of people wind up either dead or behind bars. During the early part of the 20th century, when alcohol was illegal to buy or sell, criminals made a lot of money from the trade. During the 1970s, several gangsters became wealthy off of the sale of heroin. The importation of cocaine from Colombia via Mexico and into the United States is currently the most lucrative business venture for organized crime families. Although it is difficult to ascertain the exact fortune of these masterminds, the following 10 gangsters are considered to be the richest of all time. Number 10, Frank Lucas. In the 1960s and 1970s, Frank Lucas made a fortune off of the heroin trade by utilizing an East Asian connection during the Vietnam War. This allowed him to cut off the Italian mafia, who at the time controlled the trade in his Harlem neighborhood. The heroin business in New York and New Jersey was taken over by Lucas, who was born in North Carolina and grew up there. Lucas recruited members of his family to help him with this endeavor. Lucas would say that he sold $1 million worth of heroin every day when he was at the height of his career. He also said that he had a net worth of over $52 million in addition to a big supply of liquid assets, specifically heroin. Number 9. Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco was a drug boss for the Colombian Medellin cartel. She was also known as the Black Widow and the Cocaine Queen of Miami. Griselda Blanco was murdered in 2010. During the 1970s and 1980s, she used violence and intimidation to maintain her monopoly on the cocaine trade, which resulted in monthly profits of $80 million. According to various reports, Griselda Blanco had more than $500 million in her possession during the height of her success. Blanco would then go back to her home country of Colombia after serving her sentence of 10 years in prison for narcotics charges. Number 8. Al Capone. In addition to being one of the wealthiest gangsters in history, Al Capone is also considered to be the most infamous criminal ever. During the time of Prohibition, Al Capone exercised control over the illegal booze, prostitution, and gambling rackets operating in Chicago. At its height, these businesses generated an annual revenue of $100 million. Because of his wealth, Al Capone was able to pay law enforcement officers, judges, and even the mayor of Chicago. Unfortunately for him, he was unable to bribe the Internal Revenue Service, and in 1932, he was found guilty of tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison. Number 7. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman Lora. El Chapo Lora is widely considered to be one of the most notorious drug lords in Mexico. He is the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, which is responsible for the illegal importation of billions of cash from Colombia into the United States by way of Mexico. With a net worth of more than $5 billion, Guzman rose to the level of wealth that earned him a spot on both the Forbes list of the 1,000 wealthiest people in the world and the list of the top 60 most powerful people in the world. Guzman was arrested in 1993 and sentenced to prison in 1993, however, he escaped from prison in 2001 and is now at the top of the FBI's most wanted list with a reward of $5 million for his capture. Number 6. Anthony Salermo, also known as Fat Tony. After the majority of other Italian mobsters fled East Harlem in the 1960s, when the neighborhood became more predominantly black and Latino, Fat Tony Salerno, an Italian mobster, made his fortune in the area by operating numbers in drug racket. He made tens of millions of dollars during this time. Salermo, who served as the frontman for the Genovese crime family, was honored with the title of America's Top Gangster in 1986 by Fortune magazine. This honor was bestowed upon him owing to his power and riches, which totaled more than $1 billion. In 1988, Salermo was tried for racketeering and found guilty of the accusations. He was sentenced to 70 years in jail for his crimes. Number 5. Carlos Leder. Leder was one of the original members who established the Medellin cartel in Colombia. During his time in prison, Leder met the drug trafficker George Young, who was born in Boston. Young assisted Leder in importing and distributing cocaine into the United States from his home country of Colombia, helping him amass $2.7 billion in profits. Letter became so wealthy off of the sale of cocaine that he offered to pay off Colombia's debt and even had his island in the Bahamas. In the end, Letter would be extradited to the United States and sentenced to life in prison. However, this sentence would be reduced after he consented to testify against Manuel Noriega in 1992, who had previously served as president of Panama. Number 4. Meyer Lansky. The Jewish immigrant from Poland known as Lansky amassed a fortune through various forms of gambling, including those that were legal and others that were not. Lansky would join other legendary gangsters, including Charles Lucky Luciano and Ben Bugsy Siegel, to manage a gang that would eventually be known as Murder Incorporated. Later in life, Lansky would devote his attention to the gambling industry, establishing operations in Florida, Las Vegas, and Cuba before the revolution in Cuba. In 1982, Forbes magazine included him on its list of the 400 wealthiest persons in the United States. When it became clear that Lansky would face charges of tax evasion, he took off for Israel. In subsequent years, he went back to the United States to face the charges against him, but he was found not guilty in 1974. At the age of 83, Lansky would pass away as a free man in Miami. Number 3. Joseph Kennedy. Joseph Kennedy is the patriarch of the Kennedy family, which is widely considered to be one of the most prominent and prestigious families in the United States. One of his sons went on to become president, while another went on to become a district attorney and run for president, and another became a senator. At the height of his career, John F. Kennedy was one of the wealthiest individuals in the United States. However, as the adage goes, there is a great crime that lies behind every great fortune. After whiskey was rendered illegal, Kennedy allegedly became a bootlegger with connections to the criminal underworlds of New York and Chicago. This is according to several books and gangsters who claim that Kennedy was already in the booze business before Prohibition. After the repeal of the 18th Amendment, John F. Kennedy amassed a fortune from the production and distribution of legal alcoholic beverages, as well as through his involvement in Hollywood and the stock market. In 1954, Fortune magazine ranked John F. Kennedy as one of the 20 richest persons in the United States. At the time, Kennedy had a net worth of more than $300 million, the equivalent of which in today's dollars would be in the high billions. Number 2. Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar is widely considered to be the most infamous drug baron of the contemporary period. He was the head of the Medellin cartel, which was responsible for the importation of cocaine into the United States worth billions of dollars. Pablo's wealth gave him a significant deal of power, as it enabled him to either bribe government officials or have them assassinated if they refused to accept his bribes. According to Forbes magazine, Escobar has a net worth of $25 billion, which places him as the 7th richest man in the world. After escaping from a prison in Colombia in 1993, Pablo Escobar was eventually taken out by Colombian authorities with assistance from the United States. Number 1. Amado Carrillo Fuentes. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was the leader of the Mexican Juarez cartel during his time in office. Because he had a private fleet of jets, including 22 private 727 jet airliners, many referred to him as Lord of the Skies. These planes were used to bring cocaine from Colombia to Mexico, and from there it was smuggled into the United States. The Drug Enforcement Administration referred to Fuentes as the most powerful drug trafficker of his period. His estimated net worth was $25 billion, which is near twice as much as that of Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. In 1997, he would pass away while receiving plastic surgery to change his appearance before his death. The end of this video comes up at this point. Do you find it helpful for you? Post your feedback in our comment section.